Okay, so the next scenario that I'm doing here for Dragon Pass is called Dousing the Flames. This is one that I probably should be skipping by my sort of feeling about, hey, it's not going to introduce much in the way of new rules. In fact, nothing really. The next one is where all the rules kind of fall into place. We have a lot of the core mechanisms underway already, the different forms of combat, etc. It's actually kind of amazing how few pages of rules so much game is contained in, but they are very dense. Okay, so this particular one, like I said, doesn't add a lot in terms of mechanisms, but it does add some new special units, and it's going to give me familiarity with the independents, because this is essentially a lunar versus independence game. Now, I've set up the lunars in the positions that I want to. I'll tell you this much. Any game that has free setup, we saw this back very recently when I played the Great Leaders, Great Battles series on the Spanish Succession battles. It just makes it so much harder to figure out, where you should be and such not. It's kind of cool in something like Dark Emperor, where essentially you have significant limitations to where things are set up. Well, here you don't. The lunars have a limitation where they're to set up within the dark area of the glow line, except for these two cities, which are going to be the independents. And the independents then can set up anywhere outside of there or in these two cities that's not in Sartor. So they could set pieces up here. Obviously, there's really dumb places they can. Once you see the victory conditions, you'll see why that's really dumb. It leaves a lot of flexibility in terms of exploring the game. So you can play the same scenario again and again and try out new strategies and everything. But it also makes it more difficult to approach it. Always a trade-off with everything, right? Okay. Let's try to look at what these new units are, and then I'll explain the victory conditions for it. There aren't all that many, actually. I thought there were going to be more new things. First of all, there's a new superhero here, Androgynous. Nothing too special about him in it's bigenderal. It has a friend in this scenario, which is the twins. Now, I had a hard time figuring out who the twins were until this scenario, because they are actually in it. They are the hero of the exiles who live on Wintertop. All right. Doesn't have any particular special abilities, though, strangely enough. So the next... Let's see what the next thing is. Okay, so the lunars have less than their full boat of stuff, so they don't have like the Lunar Emperor. They're missing a couple of units, but they have all the magical stuff there, except for the Emperor. The Lunar College is here. We also have to worry about some more here. Okay, herds. So herds have this little H next to, I guess that's their combat value. And this particular herd gives a +2 in the movement value. What does that mean? Well, so herds move like regular units. They don't really fight. If they're taken as a casualty somehow, they end up stampeding rather than fighting. But these particular ones give a +2 movement allowance to a bunch of different units. Any infantry or cavalry units from the Pony Breeders, Sir Ethelrest, the Exiles, the Lunar Empire, or Sartor. In this particular game, it's going to be everything except the Beastmen, these blue pieces. And they can't give it to Heroic and some other stuff. So that's kind of an interesting factor to add in. We also have Ironhoof. Once per game, Ironhoof can freeze all cav in place. The player who controls Ironhoof must announce this ability at the start of the player turn segment of the game turn. Now, this can be either side on either side of the game turn. No cav can move, retreat, or advance during the duration of that game turn. Cav units that are to arrive as reinforcements are delayed. All mounted lunar and Sartre units, other than heroes, superheroes, and the Pavis Royal Guard, are Cav units. Okay. All units of the Pony Breeders are considered Cav, other than the Feathered Horse Queen. If the Exiled Cav and the Moon Haters are Cav units, Sir Ethelred's Black Horse troops are Cav. No other units are. Okay, whatever. I'll try to figure all that out. We have a special thing here under the Exiles. Okay. We have the Earthshaker cult, and that's going to be this. And we'll worry about the movement allowance of these pieces in a moment. But this can unleash an earthquake once per game. The quake can be used in the exotic magic phase of any player turn of this player who controls the exiles. Of the player. Oh, okay. Yeah, that any shouldn't have been emphasized by me. When the cult uses the earthquake, its spirit is eliminated. And I have its spirit here. No, up here. You can see it is a magical spirit. Long range, not a terribly strong one. There are two types of earthquakes. Type 1 is a single fracture line, 8 hexes in length. Type 2 is 2 fracture lines, each 5 hexes long. No hex of one fracture line can be adjacent to a hex of the other, i.e. the two lines have to be separated by not just a single hex. Most types of units surrounded... Okay. Most types of units, I didn't understand this one when I read it before. So, most types of units on a fracture line become disrupted. Herds on a fracture line stampede. Dragons, superheroes, treasures, and disembodied spirits are not affected. Dragons and superheroes can save units. Most types of units surrounded by a closed fracture line. What? Yeah, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Are eliminated. I guess you could encircle a hex with your fraction line points, because you're going to be using I guess hex sides. I'm not sure. No, I guess what you're doing is you're taking hexes, not hex sides. So if I did these 6 hexes, anything in here would be destroyed. However, dragons, superheroes, and treasures and disembodied spirits are fine, and they can save. The dragons and superheroes can save. Fortresses are going to be badly damaged. They'll be marked and become clear terrain if they're hit, and that's any kind of fortress. But that doesn't include things like ruins, which aren't really fortresses, right? See there, S, which is my marking to indicate that there's some sort of structure that has the same kind of limitation to the number of things that can take its advantage, but they're not counted as actual fortresses. So that's about it for them. They've got one kind of really interesting ability there. Otherwise, we're going to see... we need to see how that movement works. The unit's movement over mountains and ridge lines is as if they're in clear terrain. That's what this earth rune, which it indeed is, means. Okay, so not a lot of new rules in this one. I figured that's okay because I kind of want a little bit more feel as to, how to get things done in the game. I usually don't dive this deep into a game. You'll see me play again and again with games with very different scenarios, but it's all the same map, and they all kind of feel the same. I don't usually do this in this kind of game. However, it did seem appropriate in some ways. All right, so now the particulars of this scenario. The Lunars are going to be going first. It's going to last 10 turns. The Lunars get to choose which cycle of the moon we start the game on. Nobody can retreat or move through Sartre. Okay, here's the victory conditions. The Lunars have to take Dunstop, Bagnot. Let's see what else we got here. Rich Post, Wintertop, and the Wild Temple. Rich Post is down here, Wild Temple, and Wintertop. So I've got a thrust down this way. And these are, you know, the 3 powers that are included in this one. I thought it was going to be all the independents. I was going to see the Dragon Newts and everything else in this one. Not yet. Not until the full game. And we got a whole hell of a lot of learning to do for the full game. Because that's where the diplomacy comes in. And then a lot of special critters that I had chosen to play this one with the thought of, oh, I'll get all these special things. Nah, there's all kinds of new stuff. Plus, we're going to add the random events. And so I don't know why I'm doing this one even. Okay, except it's not going to be that long. Rich Post and Wild Temple are going to be treated, these two are going to be treated, they have the terrain that they have, which is what? The town, which is the same as the ruins and everything else. Not quite a fortification. It doesn't give the zone of control bonuses, for example. However, it does have the limitation to how many units can be in it. And control is going to be determined the same way as with a fortress. Yeah, we're the last guy to walk through it. Pretty standard. But this is like a 1975 game originally, not this printing, but the Red Moon, White Bear, or White Bear, Red Moon, or whatever, was 75. So you can see there was this willingness to come up with new ideas in the same sort of way that GDW kind of came up with a lot of different kinds of ideas of how to handle things, not that SPI-AH standard, which largely actually took over the hobby at some point not long after, around the time, a little before Dragon Pass came in. There were still experiments, but nobody really nailed anything down in the same sort of way. Anyway, if the Lunars can't take everything, well, they lose. Unfortunately, I'm tethered on a cord. Whenever I say that, it's this big mess here. I can untwine it and it's not quite as bad, but there's always this annoying weight on the end of my camera that I hate. And when it gets tangled, it's obviously worse. But anyway, the thing I wanted to come forth with was the independents have to defend both of these. They have to have at least one piece in them at the beginning of the game. And that's kind of problematic because the Lunars are going to go first, and these are within the glow line, so I haven't decided my timetable yet. I should have done that before I set up the Lunars, but there's no real harm to that. You'll notice, though, that the Lunars are set up at a distance from there because these are the only 2 places within the lunar glow line that the independents can actually claim. All right, I guess that's about all I need to. Well, this is the setup I decided to go with, sacrificing a couple of units in those fortresses there because I just don't see how I can hold them. Oh, I gotta decide where this was. I'm not gonna pay my attention on what that setup was. I'm more looking at, this is going to be, I think it's a 10-turn scenario, presumably. I don't know if it's gonna last that long, as we saw with the other one. Yeah, this is going to be a 10-turn scenario, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a week. No big shock there. Yes, the moon moves. The red moon changes very rapidly. I think it's daily turns. Now I want to look at scale. I can't remember if those are linked to the days. I don't remember if that's days or if that's more like a real month. I've never really played a lunar heavy campaign. I tried to design one once, but I didn't really worry too much. The players have never been lunars in one that I've been doing. So I guess my view is this is the most important time, presumably, this early stage of the game. So I'm going to put it here, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That gives me good coverage where towards the end of the game, if I need it, I'll be back in the rich area of of the moon again. And that gives all the more reason for me to defend these rather weakly. The independents actually have a really tough time here in terms of how to spread their forces out. I'm going for that delaying tactics, but we saw in the last scenario that didn't end up working out terribly well. We'll see how it works here. It worked a lot better when there wasn't magic in play. Unfortunately, they don't have a whole hell of a lot of pieces to really stop the lunar advance. I'm looking at the main routes, the road coming down through here, because even those hills, well, hills are only one movement point each. I've been charging more than that. So they're not a terribly powerful factor. I'm not sure what's hills and what's mountain in this game. If you look at the imagery, mountain is this, hill is this, huh? I'm pretty sure these are mountains. I think all of this is hills. This looks like mountain. I mean, that it looks distinct enough, but the hills look a little too pointy for my taste to be hills. I guess it is clear though. So this is actually not that nasty a terrain to go through, but it gives me some defensive benefit, especially with the river here, the wrong river. And there's a lot of territory to cover. I mean, I could see an outflank cutting this way. I've got to take everything though. That means I've got to take Wintertop, the Wild Temple, and Rich Post. Those are the three that are going to be hard to get to. And the road seems like a good idea, but it really isn't. Hills are just one movement point each. Forests are two, so there's not really any tremendous need to go through. I guess to go through the road. Well, it's a little faster because you have that 1-2 boink movement. Anyway, it meant that I set up kind of extended forward, but the plane here means that I've got more difficult. It meant that I built this crescent. Now, I didn't absolutely have to. I could have cut a straighter line and just said the hell with this. But again, time is the issue here. I'm expecting the Lunars will be able to eventually break through if this went on forever. But scenarios are bounded by the amount of supplies, etc., that the army is expected to have. These armies collapse after a certain amount of time. Even the Lunar Empire, apparently. To say I'm kind of dragging my feet about playing this now. Once I play something a few times, I kind of get fatigued with it. The headhunter screening call that I had just set up. Actually, I wasn't expecting a response so quickly. Sadly, it would mean something about a decrease in income from where I was, but I don't know if I can find it. I don't know. I probably can. I'm just unwilling to ask someone I already know. I can't do that networking crap. All right. So, what I was going to say, and why I came onto the video, other than the foot dragging aspect, which I didn't really go into enough depth in, but I don't want to go too much into it, is that another person who's a big fan of this time Wolf Corbett, the other ones no name them, at least that's, you know, they're interwebs names, right, has pointed out something that I'm definitely sure he's right on. He thinks that the the meteor, the crater makers, that destroy everything at once, the way that's worded, and I'm kind of surprised that I read it the way I did, is in the lunar exotic magic phase of any one game turn, other than a black or dying day, the crater makers can call down a meteor storm. I think the one in there kind of indicates it's only usable once per scenario. That makes sense. I'll tell you why actually all of the once per scenario attacks really make sense. There are very powerful rune magics in Glorantha. Rune magic usually is stuff that you get to use once per whenever. You just have to charge it back up. It's a little bit less at your beck and call than spirit magic is, but very, very powerful rune magic tends to be you use it once and then you have to recharge basically by sacrificing again for that permanent rune magic ability. So most rune magic is gained by simply sacrificing some magic, and then you can use it. I don't remember what it is, but it's essentially once per, adventure. You need some time to recharge and rest to get it back up to power. But that would make sense that you would have that ability in every single turn of this game, whatever the length is, even if it's only a day. But these others, you sacrifice your permanent stats, essentially, for a one-shot use of it. Now, that's also true about the regular rune magic under certain circumstances, but let's forget about that. This is the super powerful stuff. For example, resurrection can be done on this once, per sacrifice of permanent stat value. So this is going to be fairly rare stuff. There's also, ritualized type magic and such not that gets added in terms of being able to do spirit quests and this, that, and the other, which could also be applied to this. But something along the lines of destroying an army would certainly not be easily available under any magical model that's in RuneQuest. The only way it would really be available is through an extraordinary means. At the very least, one-use rune magic. Probably more likely actually requiring rituals, etc. So, given all that, it only makes sense that they'd only be able to do it once per game. Alright, someday I'll start playing. I started right quick. Now, sufficient forces, mainly infantry, smacking into those big fortresses. We'll see how that works. Everything else, really only the temple here is where I'm launching my main attack. Basically, the goal in this game, as far as I'm concerned, is wipe out the enemy's troops. You're not in that much of a hurry. So hitting things hard and fast early makes sense. But now comes the question. I've got a lot of stuff here, including the bat. Where I want to launch my magical attacks. So I've got the crater makers. I'm probably going to hit them right off real quick, and I think I'm going to strike over here with them and just to hit that right away. This is the exotic phase before I actually have to place anything, I think. So let me look them up, see what effect they have on herds, because I see there's a herd. I actually put the herds on top to kind of hide what's there, because the herds aren't terribly important in the game. Although if the lunars capture them, they also get that bonus movement point allowance. Herds can be captured. If they take a hit in regular combat, they're actually captured rather than defeated. And they can't attack, so I'm not going to want to leave them on top there, except in the sense that, well, they can absorb some losses that way, which is kind of cool. But I've got to find the crater makers and see if there's any. So one of the problems is, like the superheroes, it gives special rules on what they're affected and not affected by, and I don't think it's actually specified here. Okay, so herds, treasures, and disembodied spirits are not eliminated. So this is really cool. Oh no, here it actually does say dragons and superheroes are also not affected, essentially. Okay. So I'm going to hit this stack here, because this is a big stack, and the majority of my army is swinging this way. I think I'm going to throw my spirits mainly against this. It's within range of the bat, which means I'll get the full glow spot off of it. There's nothing to eliminate the glow spot here. So let's take a look at these guys. Okay, we've got a normal hero. He's affected by it. But not killed. not automatically killed. So I will put the hero. See, I don't know what to do with them because I've got to kind of remember where they are. And now the other factor is the herd itself, which I have to find the herd rules for. I had some somewhere. Oh boy. I'll be back when I find. So the herd stampedes, the owner rolls a die and move it at full movement allowance in the direction indicated by the map board compass. I gotta have one of these somewhere, but I don't see it. So I'm gonna just make one be up and go clockwise. I got the rosette there, but I don't see the compass. It may exist, may not. So 6, that means it's gonna go in this direction. And that'll be 1. Now hills, I've been misplaying all game. They're only 1 movement point or every game. 2. Well, they don't have a movement point allowance. So I guess that's all they have for this herd. I don't know. That'll work for now. So obviously, you know, this kind of situation, the game is almost entirely all special rules. I'll try to remember this when I get to, you know, my review of it. Some people hate special rules. I'm not a big fan of them because they're hard to find. But in a game that's entirely special rules, you know, SFB is this way too, that you're going to have to keep looking up everything until you're very familiar with the everythings that are in your given scenario. The problem with this game is it is all special rules, like I said. I mean, there's this base core mechanism, but even each of the combat steps is significantly different in terms of how it patterns, etc. So until you're really familiar with the course of the combat, you end up looking that up again and again. In terms of each unit, so many units have their own special rules. That adds a lot of flavor and excitement to the game. That adds a lot of different ways to do things. It's like the cards in a Magic deck. Every single, or nearly every one, well, many of them have their own special rules. And likewise in this, many of the creatures have their own special rules. Unlike the cards in a Magic deck, you don't have that rule on the component itself. You have to page through the book and find them. And that's kind of a pain in the butt. But there you have it. All right. Now I'm going to launch my spirits, and God knows where they're going to go. But yeah, the Crater Makers, this is their one time that they took off a shot. I wanted to do it early. Now that means I'm free to kind of consolidate the Independence forces. But, you know, this is a pretty broad front that I have to cover. I can't really defend other than in that fashion. Now, I could defend something like this in you know, in depth. But you know what I'm curious about? Those defense in depths, who gets hit first? So if I'm inside a fortress, because I did nothing wrong even in my thinking, if it's this way, if I'm inside the fortress and I say the first 3 units that you attack are the ones in the fortress, the others are considered to be behind that. But that doesn't make sense topically in the idea of, well, if I've got people besieged and I'm hunting down the people not in the fortress, I shouldn't have to attack the guys in the fortress, right? So I'm going to look that up, make sure that it works logically, because I'm not positive. So the rules inside there, at most 3 major units can be inside the structure. If there are 4 more major units in the hex, the 4th such unit from the bottom of their stack and all units stacked above are outside, which means that the units in the fortress will be the last to be hit. So it does work kind of logically. Since, you know, the level of cleverness in this very different kind of combat set of rules, etc., is almost astounding. You know, the fact that something like that works as expected. Compare that to what I last did, which is the Great Leaders, Great Battles, or whatever, by Berg. You know, Berg he's made so many different games, etc., but there's a lot of stuff you can kind of pick apart in that game. Now, this is more of an operational level game, but I've seen operational level games, the Avalon Hill Classics, you know, that you can kind of look at and say, yeah, that doesn't quite work out. That doesn't quite make sense. The sensible connectivity of this game, given how many moving parts it has, etc. I'll give you an example against Albion. I find Albion to be a far inferior product in terms of the game experience it provides, as well as, you know, the sort of way it all actually fits together. There are some real, geez, that doesn't seem reasonable type feelings to it, as well as the, oh my god, I can move this humongous stack all around the place and kill everything with it. And sure, I'll take attrition, but we'll see Albion later. But I'd be almost intrigued to try to work this kind of combat system into Albion. I'm really impressed with what was done with this compared to most other fantasy war game type things, actually. I'm going for wiping out units. I threw all my spirits in here that have a reliance on the lunar table because that's within range of the bat. Now, yes, I could hit here too, and that might be wise, but I'm counting on being able to hit this pretty hard. I'm going to have to restack, obviously, during the melee. I probably don't want the bat on top, although he's going to get his chaotic eating. I've also launched an attack here because I see those manticores on top. Nice, big, meaty, battle-ready thing, but not a lot of magical power. They're going to fall. I want to kill them real quick. Okay. So now I'll start handling the individual combats. Most particularly, I have to decide what I want to eat with the bat. Oh. All right, well, I can't eat whatever I want, so what's he going to protect? He's going to protect everything except this. This is the only thing that I can eat. And we're pretty sure that our little two-faced guy is going to be up there on the top. Now I'll take care of the magical combats, and then we'll go to missile and melee. Okay, and now after the attacks, you can see both of these fell fairly easily. We blasted through some of the forces in here. We didn't even kill the Manticore because there was a better unit to kill. This Cav, a little fast, well, I don't know if better is the word. It had more magical power. It actually met the magical rating better. And I wasn't able to kill an additional unit by taking the Manticore. So now we've got the big battle here, and we don't want the bat on top. We got some missile fire there. Ooh. Wow, I'm going to lose some of those missile units, it looks like. So I've got, it looks like 4 missile fire units there, nothing else here. So let's take, oh, let's make sure the defender doesn't have any. Yeah, the defender has a missile fire first. Given the defensive missile fire takes place first, and well, disrupting the hero would be great, but I'm gonna go for a big unit, a regular unit, not a missile. I don't have much chance either way. I need a 6 to get any kind of success. And I don't. So I was going in this hex in case it mattered. But now these guys have 4, which puts them on this column. How do you get a plus on this? There's certain kinds of critters that have a bonus. Alright, crap. So I've got a chance of getting in there. So that's a 2DD. And the defender gets to choose what he's taking the hits on. Well, clearly I'll take the hits here and here. These big minotaurs in the way. Pretty sure we're not going to see a successful attack there. Okay, let's see. We've got 25, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, yeah, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, and 6 here because we can't use them all. So that sounds like 43 that the attacker's launching. And this is a ruin, so it's going to be 1.5. Okay, 43 times 4 says I'm going to do 21 hits. At 1.5, I can't hit the biggest unit on top. And this guy's going to launch his attack against the weak little archers there with 25, 30, so that he can do some significant damage coming back. Well, maybe not. 5 points, but these guys wouldn't get defensive terrain even if they were sitting in it, and they're not. So that is the end of the lunar phase. This guy has a chance of coming back. He's just a normal hero. And he does. And it's kind of a good thing. No, this is just the queen. She'll be here. I marked her location with that. And no harm in leaving her on top because I can remember she's there. I don't have an opportunity to destroy everything with the independence. But I don't think I'm going to get a better opportunity than hitting what's collected here. So now I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kill these units, I think, and disrupt these, which might be particularly potent. It's after my movement. Alternatively, a 5-hex one isn't going to knock these guys out. I'm not going to be able to kill these with it. I could, of course, wipe these guys out with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think 3. Yeah, I think this is an 8 as well. But it looks to me like my most effective strike is right in here. So I'm going to launch my magic there. That's going to get rid of my Earthshaker Spirit, which is okay. It's not that terribly powerful other than through this ability. Now, what do I look at here? Most units are going to be eliminated. Dragon superheroes, treasures, and disembodied spirits. Well, I know where the superhero is, so that's going to kill these. Now, unfortunately for me, these guys come back next turn, which may mean I'd rather hit this with the mages. See, I could do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that would be more effective. So then I just disrupt this stack. The problem is I was going to hit these with my magic. How do the full moon dudes come back? And this is, on a full moon day, I can place them on the board. They must appear in hexes containing lunar magicians. That's going to be just about anywhere. So wait, yeah. Alright, so I'm going to wipe out these hexes instead, and these guys become weakened. Now, this is going to get rid of the spirit here. So for example, this is a minor class 3 spirit that I have to kill. That spirit's not actually dead. In the more advanced rules, that spirit would stay over here, theoretically, because if you take that mage back as a replacement, the spirit would then be available for him. I'm not going to worry about that because there are no replacements in this scenario. So all the minor mages have been killed by this. I don't know quite what I'm destroying until it happens. And then this hex as well. And I can see I've got the major mage. Oh, and the meteor shakers. Not that they've already fired their big wad off. But wow, that's a pretty hefty hit. And then these guys And these guys are both disrupted, and I want to see how weak these guys get on the other side. I'm not probably privy to what's actually in this stack, except for the top unit. And now, I think I can launch my wizards, but I'm not, or my spirits. I'm not sure about that. Spirits had to be placed before I launch my attack, and I'm just going to throw them into here. This is where I would have hit with them. It's probably overkill at this point, but that's okay. And you can see I'm not launching any other attacks. This should go quite quickly. I've got 15 hits of spirit magic on them. I get all the hits. Now, the defender had no defensive magic. So I have wiped out quite a bit of the lunar army there. And you can see I made the big mistake of having my stuff so close together. Now, I'm not used to this. I'm used to kind of the, hey, don't have it all stacked together because of the attacks from other things. But now with the Earthshakers, we see that their special ability says, don't set your stuff up next to each other. A big stack can also be problematic because you can wipe that out as well. But boy, I think I just tore a hole in the entire Lunar's ability, and I think the game is over at this point because of that mistake. But that's okay, we'll play it out a little bit more. I grabbed the Lunar Mages instead of these, but it's essentially the same. I got a huge value, so no biggie there. All right, and now if there are any disruptions, and I think there were, but I already recovered them, we would get them back. I actually don't need these guys here, but that's okay. That's where they are. There's no possibility that these guys could be reached except through spirit combat. Just keep getting worse for the Lunars. They launched a major attack against here because of the hill effect. The 28 points of damage they did nothing because that big 20 there is a 30, and the counter strike, because that survived sitting on top, destroyed many of the units attacking it. I think I took units that I shouldn't have off there. I don't know. Yeah, I screwed up. I've got a couple of units that here that were infantry that I couldn't hit. So I took 10, 13, I don't remember what I had total. 13 out of 24. So I could have taken a shot at this, but I ended up killing these units. Remember, they don't get the defensive bonus because they're attacking. Okay, so it wasn't quite as bad as it looks. These guys are going to flip back over, but it's after they end up in their, I wonder where he is, in their recovery. They can't cast the spells. Their range is 0, so they can't throw their spirits out to protect anything else. No biggie there, really. It just means that this stack is clearly potent in terms of defenses. All right, that's going to put things over on the Independents, and it looks like this is their game. And the Independents launch a successful spirit attack here on the temple. It's funny that temples don't provide any defense. They would probably have to be, for the spirit combat, they would probably have to be adequately typed. So, like, you know, this would only work towards the Wintertop Exiles defenses or something like that. But you feel like there's usually in Glorantha some sort of magical defenses associated with the temples, and it kind of would apply there. Anyway, I've also dropped myself a defensive spirit over there just to give the Lunars some pause to launching an attack there. I don't know for sure where things are, but if I look at the counters, I can see there's a little bit of gray under there. So I'm pretty sure that's where the superhero is, if I remember later. That is legitimate within the game. This may take a significant amount of time. as I push forward into turn 3, simply because the independents don't even now have the kind of power to straight up face the Lunars. And that's not their goal. Their goal is to hold something. So it seems safer to maintain this defensive line than to try to launch some sort of attack, especially against Jariel, who's just so powerful. Better to wait and take the defensive throughout the game. So I'm going to load this one up as part 1 of this particular scenario. I'm only 3 turns in, but I think the game's decided at this point, but the Lunars are probably going to wear themselves out on further attacks to try to push forward. Sometimes I complain about, hey, would the attacker keep going under these circumstances? The problem in something like this is it's kind of like a medieval chevauché. I could just call it off and save some of my men. But in terms of what that affects the attack is a defeat either way. The loss of some nobility, you can always ennoble more people, make more knights, as it were. It really isn't too hard a thing to raise an army in these sorts of circumstances. Likewise, the Lunars have a tremendous resource behind them that they'd call on. So until it seems truly hopeless, I think they will continue to try to press the attack, because the cost of the attack, much of the cost of the attack in this kind of world, would be actually just gathering together the forces and preparing to launch it, from what I get from the flavor text.